Hi guys, so today we're going to talk about biking and how we can create change around the way that our society thinks about cycling as a means of commuting. So I'm Megan and this is Clay, and we're just going to get right into it for you.
Hi, so first we'll lay out the problem. Since the boom of industrialization and the invention of cars, our cities and towns have been designed specifically for vehicle travel. In order to normalize bicycle travel, whether that's for commuting or just for personal reasons, we need to remodel the various cities and towns we live in. This is a global issue affecting cities all around the world, but many modern cities are already adopting an increasingly biker-friendly design model that includes bike lanes and more bike facilities. Some of these poster cities include Copenhagen and Amsterdam. When you look at the numbers, it's obvious. Driving in a car emits almost 10 times more CO2 than driving a bicycle for a commute. And that doesn't include the other harmful pollutants that are released when driving a vehicle. When you look at Barcelona, one of the poster cities for bicycling, their bike share program reduces carbon dioxide emissions by 9,000 metric tons each year. And to try to visualize that, you can think of that as 45 blue whales, an enormous amount.
Yeah, and just to add on to that a little bit, a really good quote that I like to think about when I'm thinking about why this problem was created is that guidelines and standards feel like they come down from the gods, but you realize how they're based on standards that were built in the 50s and 60s during our industrialization movement, when all these cities were truly surrounded by like the new modern vehicle, and they thought that that was going to be the future. So that's like a kind of important thing to think about how this started.
And now we really want to think about why it matters. And first and foremost, we want to lower our carbon footprint. And now more than ever, with the impending global warming affecting everything around us, it's vital that we put a stop to our unsustainable ways of living. And why not start with travel, which accounts for 1/5 of all US emissions. And it's a pretty shocking fact that around 24 pounds of CO2 and other greenhouse gases are emitted burning only a single gallon of gasoline. And then after that, we want to rethink societal norms. And as we said before, ever since the industrialization, our towns and cities have been designed specifically for this vehicle travel. So we need to rethink how our cities are even planned out. And we want to change this very culture of our society's relationship with sustainability. This single effort could make huge strides against the fight against climate change. And third, we want to initiate a ripple effect by normalizing bicycle travel and increasing the public's knowledge on why sustainability is so important. We can in turn then initiate other changes to happen that could create a society that is overall more sustainable, not just in the biking realm.
Yeah, so Portland State University actually found that when 5 major US cities added protected bike lanes, ridership actually rose from 20% to 170%. So that's like an insane amount, and it just goes to show that people are willing to make the change if their city supports them. And I guess what we're finding is that there's kind of a disconnect between the person that wants to bike and what the city is providing them. So the next part of this, that's a really important section, is the environmental injustice aspect to biking. Even now, if you just ask someone, well, what do you think about bicycling as a way to commute to work? You really do think about like the white man in the biker shorts with his like helmet on and like his full gear. We don't really think about bicycling as like a regular means of transportation, whereas in like cities like Amsterdam and Copenhagen, even like Barcelona, you just see regular people commuting to work, biking to work, and women in like heels, people in dresses. It's just so normalized, and that's kind of a movement that needs to start here. So urban cycling investments tend to focus primarily on the needs of wealthier riders, although the single biggest group of Americans who commute via bicycle live in households that earn under $50,000 a year annually, and many of whom earn less than $10,000, the majority of whom were non-white. So that's a huge portion of people that we are forgetting about, and it's not only just in sense of terms of like travel and like city travel, but just like their access to having the options to choose this. The fastest growth in cycling rates since 2001 has occurred among Hispanic, African American, and Asian American riders, but minority neighborhoods have fewer bike facilities, and riders there face higher risk of accidents and crashes. So oftentimes they'll create these like nicer, safer bike paths in areas that don't necessarily need it as much. So it'll be like low traffic areas where there's like tons of storefronts, or really residential areas where there's really not much traffic, but these communities are the ones that actually need it the most because they don't have the sidewalks, they don't have any means of bike lane, any space between the sidewalk and the car to put their bikes. So they're the most vulnerable. And then compared with white, wealthier neighborhoods, bicyclists in ethnic minority neighborhoods receive more tickets for unlawful riding or are involved in collisions. So that just kind of goes back with the fact that if a cop sees someone in their neighborhood and there's no bike lane and there's no sidewalk and they're just on the side of the road, or if they have to be on the sidewalk because it's unsafe to be in the road, they're more likely to get a ticket than a rider maybe in like a more notable, nicer area. With access to properly marked cycle tracks, they would have less reason to ride on the sidewalk or against traffic on the street and be less likely to be hit by cars. And bike equity is a powerful tool for increasing access to transportation and reducing inequality in US cities. It kind of makes people that normally wouldn't be mobile, people that can't afford cars, people that can't afford public transit. So it's a really important topic to discuss when you're talking about transportation in cities. And then some solutions we came up, we really kind of analyzed different cities around the world that have already paved the way for future cities and what those are going to look like. So an example of a solution, we'll start with taxes. In Denmark, there's a 150% tax on vehicle purchases. So a car that would be $20,000 in the US would be $50,000 in Denmark. So that markup really deters people from being able to buy it. And they also tax gas the same way, where citizens have to pay about $6 per gallon of gas. So this kind of helps make biking the cheapest, easiest, and most accessible way of getting around, whereas in the States, it's really not like that. Then another solution could be parking. Doing away with parking in cities and making it a scarce commodity helps enforce social change in how people choose their method of transportation, and increasing the price of it will help deter people from using vehicles as well and opting to bike. So yeah, and then proximity. So when you're thinking about biking, you're thinking about the fact that people can't commute like as far as they could in a vehicle. So to really implement this, you're going to have to rethink zoning policies. You're going to have to rethink how multifamily housing is working in your city. You're going to have to think about housing locality. And that's just a huge step in terms of city policies. People need locality and choice to be able to drive without a vehicle, because you're not going to be living 20 miles out of the city and have to bike in every day. That's not feasible. So you need to work on solutions to provide more accessible housing in your city, which is also another issue in its own. Which kind of leads us into planning. Planning cities around people is a huge step, and making biking the easiest, the cheapest, the safest, and fastest route pushes biking to be normalized for all people. So back to an example of Denmark, they have bridges that are specifically for on foot people on bikes, no cars. And not only does this make this super safe for all the users, but it also makes it the fastest way to get around. Whereas it would be a 10-minute bike ride, you're going to be doing a 30-minute car drive to get around. So they've truly made it the easiest way and the safest way to get around from that. And people often argue things like how climate can change people not wanting to bike, or like having kids. And I think that a really good example of that is also like in Europe and Amsterdam and Denmark. In all these places, they have people that bike in the winter because it's the best way to get around and stay healthy and get outside. But they also have little caravans who attach to the bike for children. So it's something that is accessible to like families and not just single people. And then back to access, making sure all citizens have proper access to biking infrastructure and bikes is vital. Creating immense bike infrastructure in your city center is of no use if it doesn't reach the outskirts of the area to access commuters. So we kind of touched on this already, but just creating bike paths in your city center isn't enough. You need to make sure that these are connected to neighborhoods from the outskirts of the city, neighborhoods from other towns close by. Like, that's how you're going to get immense biking populations to your city. Yeah, so these were just some solutions we came to. Oh, and also in terms of access to biking, offering things like bike rentals or like tax breaks for biking, certain things like that can really help people get to be doing this sort of commuting. So yeah.
I think the biggest takeaways of our project is that this is a really feasible solution to climate change. And biking already is recognized as a method of commuting, a method of travel, and it just needs to be more easily accessible and it needs to be a forefront for how we want to travel and make it accessible to everyone, because it's sustainable, it's cheap, and it's not an outlandish idea. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.